Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's video. My name is Angel DeSantis. This week I wanted to talk about the method that I use to get myself to be this person instead of the person that I was. And also why self-love and self-care is so important in walking towards who you desire to be. So the method that I use, it's AOD, ask, observe, decide. Is it a coincidence that A and D is also my name? Maybe. But that's kind of the method that I use, and I'm going to break that down a little bit. But the first one is ask. And what I do is I ask myself a question, or if I find myself triggered, I ask myself why I'm triggered, and then I journal, or I just let myself think. But I really like to journal because it makes me finish the thought. Because if you grew up in a religious setting, they need you to be confused in order to maintain control over your mind. And sometimes what they do is you have things set up in your brain to keep you confused. So sometimes if you're just thinking, you can go from one thought into the next, into the next, into the next, and you never actually have to complete a thought. And for me, that showed up when I started journaling, where I would start writing and I would never finish or close out a sentence. And when I saw that, I realized that I didn't finish out a thought on the page because I never finished out a thought in my mind. So I highly recommend journaling. But anyways, I would ask myself a question, and then I would respond on the page as honestly as possible, being incredibly honest, just getting out whatever judgment or hate or shame or whatever it is. I would just write it out and finish it out on the page. And then once I did that, then I would observe what showed up on the page. And this is why self love and self care is important. Because if you have self hatred, when you look at the page, you think you're a piece of shit. You think, oh my God, I can't believe I think that, or I can't believe that I'm that hateful, or I'm that pathetic, or I'm such a loser. And then you can't do the next step. And you can get stuck there in that observation of hating yourself and that observation of just being so disgusted at who you are, not because that's who you are, but because that's how you were taught to feel about yourself. Um, and so this is an important step because this is the reason self love is so important, because you need to be able to observe what's inside without hating what's inside. And I think for a lot of us, especially initially, we're taught to hate ourselves very aggressively from a very young age. If you grow up in a religious environment, they tell you you're bad, they tell you you deserve hell, they tell you you deserve beatings and whatever it is. And it's important right away to just stop and understand that as a child, there was nothing that you could have done that would have deserved hell or would have deserved physical, emotional, or mental abuse. And you have to start there with understanding that, because if you grew up in a religiously abusive environment, you will have been taught that. You will have been taught that you deserved the bad things that happened to you. You deserved hell. You deserved beatings. You deserved abuse or whatever it is. And I think it's incredibly important to understand that absolutely no, you did not. And even if those things happen to you, you never deserved them. So if you need to pause and stop there and journal a little bit about whether or not you feel like you deserved the things that happened to you, then please do. But that's step one, is you got to know that there was nothing that you did wrong as a child to deserve the abuse that was given to you. So once you're able to do that, then I believe it's easier to observe what's on the page and give yourself permission to be who you were or who you are at this moment. And I think religion really tries to shame you for being who you are. And part of the healing process is giving yourself permission to be where you were and who you are right now. And this is such a big step because the observation step requires you being able to see something show up on the page. Maybe it's something hateful, and being like, oh, I guess I'm a little bit hateful right now, without taking the next step of being like, that means I deserve hell and I'm a bad person. But your brain might be set up to immediately take you there. And so it's important to set up the proper roadblocks in your head and understand what your tendency is. And if you grew up again in a religiously abusive environment, your tendency will be the immediate self-hatred route. And that's not because of who you are. That's because that's how your brain was set up. It's important to like pull those apart. So just because you think you're a bad person doesn't immediately mean that you are going to hell and you deserve nothing and you're horrible. Um, that's an abuse pattern. And if you recognize that in your head, it's important to understand that that's a mentally abusive pattern that someone else set up in your head so that you would police yourself. And again, not your fault, but it might be there. And the third step after the observation is D, which is decide, stands for decide. And once you realize what's there and you're able to observe it without hating yourself, then you get to decide whether or not you want to keep this. You can think, do I still want this, or is this here for a reason? Or was this set up to keep me in a disempowered place or to keep me hating myself for some reason? And if so, can I let it go? Or can I replace it with something else or override it? Or, what is something better that I can put in place of this? But you will not be able to decide for yourself if you hate yourself. And if you think that you don't make good decisions and you don't trust yourself and you're not correct about yourself and everyone else is right about you, and why did you think that you could do anything? That sort of self-hatred prevents you from taking that third step of decision. So the method is very simple. It's ask, observe, decide. It's 3 steps, but of course each step um, is there's a lot of stuff in it that brings up the mentality that you have. Um, so it can feel really tough. So I would suggest that you start with something small, but I just wanted to throw that method out there. This is also how I have set up the religious trauma course, where it's you ask yourself a question, you be as honest as possible with yourself, and then you decide if you still want to be this person or you still want this mindset. And if not, then you get to decide where you want to go from here. But that middle part, the part of being able to observe yourself without hating who you are, is where the magic happens. Um, so I would suggest starting really small just to prove that you can do it. And it can be something as simple as asking yourself, like, do I want to go for a walk today? And you can say yes or no, or maybe, or I don't know. And then being like, oh, why did I answer that? And maybe it's because it's going to rain today and you don't know. Or maybe it's no, you went on like a 4-mile hike yesterday, so today is a no. And just making it conscious. And then you decide, okay, well, the question was, do I want to go for a walk today? My answer was no. And then you can decide, okay, well, I'm going to be the person who stays in today, or I'm going to be the person who maybe tries again tomorrow. But it then becomes conscious. It then becomes something that you have chosen to do for yourself consciously, as opposed to never asking the question, never observing who you are, and never making any sort of decision for who you are or why you are the way you are. And again, if you grew up in a place where you're always disempowered, this can seem like a lot. So take that ask, observe, decide, and if it's possible for you, start with something very small that makes it doable. You don't start with the biggest thing, the thing that feels like the biggest thing that you have to work through. Start small. Ask yourself a question that you are unafraid to really honestly answer, and then answer it to the best of your ability. Be as honest as possible, and then observe your answer with a lot of self-compassion. Give yourself permission to answer honestly, and you don't need to do anything about it. You don't need to feel guilty for how you answered. You don't need to feel like you deserve heaven or you deserve hell based on your answer. It's just what's here right now, and that's okay. I think all of us are made of really good stuff. And especially if you are here, it means that you know you're made of better stuff than you're giving yourself credit for. And by virtue of being here, this shows that you are trying. And by virtue of trying, you will get better. The practice is in the trying. The getting better, the sharpening of your skills is because you're willing to try. So I highly encourage you to attempt this method of ask, observe, decide, and understand that you're allowed to feel whatever it is that you feel. You're allowed to feel mixed emotions. You're allowed to feel confusion show up on the page. Let it show up there. and then observe what's there. So you have to separate what you notice from how you feel about yourself. And if you're able to do that, then you're able to take the next step of deciding who you want to be and where you want to go from here. What decision do you want to make for yourself to get you from where you are to who you want to be? And please know that the journey, I know it sounds crazy that the journey is the destination, but the journey is the destination. And I am able to look back through my journals and see how I was in pain or see how I was confused. And I read them and I have a lot of self compassion. I think, oh my gosh, that's so cute. I was trying so hard. And I'm really proud of myself that I was able to try that hard. And I'm proud of myself for writing it down, honestly, because now when I look back, I see how far I've come. And it's a very beautiful thing. And I'm really proud of myself for keeping track. And I'm proud of myself for continuing on, because now when I look back, I see the progress. And this is not a quick fix. This requires a lot of honesty with yourself and a lot of love and self-compassion. So I'm going to link my video on self-compassion. But really, it always comes down to love for yourself and self-worth. You are worth helping, and you need to prove that to yourself. So learn to help yourself. Learn to sit with yourself and observe what's there without hating what comes up. You are not made wrong. And there's still, even at this point, there's nothing that you do that you can do to deserve hell. That's a old concept that you no longer need. So I want to offer that out, where you ask, you observe, and you decide. And that's the method that I've used. And I wanted to come on here and just tell you that that's my method, encourage you to try it. Again, I do have a course that I will link below, but it's all set up in that manner: ask, observe, decide. So I hope that this was helpful. If you try it and you like it, let me know. I would love to hear your feedback and how it hopefully helped you. But thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. I know that this is hard work, but I know that you can do it. So thank you guys, and I'll see you next week.